there's the idea. I'd like to hear from you. And then we're going to practice a new habit together. But I want to hear about this one. I want to hear if you're having troubles figuring out, and we're going to give you a microphone. We're just going to pass it. I want to hear from you if you're having troubles figuring out how to monitor it. This is this conversation now. I give you a little mini lecturette. We're now having this conversation, and then in a few minutes we're going to do a practice session where we all practice changing the same habit. Jackson, would you stand up so that we can capture our little interaction on film?
The habit that I picked up on someone on the side of the rooms, I really liked it, it rang true for me, was to clarify my desires, to clarify what they are and to be certain about them. And I'm having trouble with coming up with a monitoring system for that.
Yeah. Well, here's a few ideas. One is that you could do either computerized or a handwritten log, and I'd say maybe twice a day, you just reflect back on the last several hours and say, how am I doing? And you could give yourself a grade, like if you're doing great at being clear about what you want, and then you give yourself an A. If you're not being so good, then you give yourself a C. If you realize you just spent the last half a day in total confusion, maybe you give yourself an F, which is not for failure. It stands for feedback.
Okay.
Because you're giving yourself feedback that you're not yet improving that goal. So that'd be one way. Does that give you any other ideas? Any other ways to monitor?
I'm still snagged on sort of knowing whether or not I've even registered that there was a desire.
Okay, good. So another option is you could find somebody who you're fairly close to, maybe a coworker or somebody, a friend that sees you a lot. Tell them of your goal and ask them to periodically give you either a numeric score or just kind of a description to say, how am I coming? How am I doing? Am I getting clearer? I want to get clearer, so give me a little report. So you could get a report from them.
Okay.
You could also do that in a coaching relationship. That's a lot of what we do as coaches, is that we train ourselves to listen to what people want and then give them feedback from our point of view about if they're progressing toward it or away from it. I kind of like to think of people's desires as habits, not only the clarity of desire, but a desire. So then my job is to say, oh yeah, look, you're getting warmer, you're getting warmer. Oh, colder, colder.
Good, thank you. That's helpful.
Thanks for the conversation. I want to talk about this a little bit more, and then we'll practice. Yes, Anderson, get your microphone. And while getting Anderson a microphone, anybody else? Got the idea? Rick, get your microphone. Rick, go ahead, Anderson.
I'd like to add a habit.
Yeah.
I'd like to add the habit of remembering people's names.
Yes.
And I know you're really good at it, so that was one of the reasons why I wanted to ask you the question, because you remember my name. And one of the things I thought of was a way to measure and monitor it was just to write down as soon as I can the people's names as I meet them.
Yeah. Well, this is a really good idea, Anderson, what you just came up with. And it was the way that George McGovern was so successful in South Dakota. George McGovern was one of the most liberal politicians we've ever had. Most of you remember when he ran for president, he was lost in all states, including South Dakota, except one. And yet, in conservative South Dakota, George McGovern got elected. One way is that he knew everybody. And he did exactly what you talked about. He had a set of 3x5 cards with him, and every time he'd meet somebody, as soon as he got away from it, he'd write their name down on one side, on the other side, some facts about them. And then he would use those as flashcards before he came to town next. Say, oh, Anderson Taylor, flip it over. Oh, Canadian, likes to fish, is out to South Dakota, okay. And then, oh, Anderson, well, how's fishing? So that's a good one, and it's also a way to monitor, because the more cards you've accumulated that you say, okay, now I remember that name, you can see that card stack grow. The more it grows, that's another way to see if you're accomplishing your new habit.
Okay, great, thanks.
Yeah, that's a good. And Rick.
I promise to use the ability that I have when I'm coaching other people or talking to other people to empathize and love and support them on myself. And I think that'll make a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah, and have you thought about how to monitor that?
I think my internal pain will monitor that for me, because I know how I feel when I'm truly listening and loving, and when I'm going the other way.
Good. And what I'm recommending is in addition to turning into that internal feeling, the kind of the pain when you're not contributing to others and the joy when you are contributing to others, that you physically keep track of it in some way. For example, if you're doing it with yourself and being self-reflective, you could journal about it once or twice a day. So that you can see the change. That's why I like these charts, so you can actually see the progress.